In this DCS debrief, we go outside the wire and up into the overhead where our JTAC runs into trouble.
Break, troops are coming.
Oh, there's an explosion.
In the rest of this video, we're going to go over this CAS convoy that's for sensor tasking. I'm joined by two folks here. I'd like to introduce, first of all, Blizzard. Blizzard, how are you doing today?
Pretty good.
So I know you have some relevant experience and you're active in this field, so we're going to appreciate your input. You know, you put together this mission for us, and you're working with us on it. You know, as a squadron trying to do things, DCS is like a sandbox. Without people helping us do these things, we have to rely on the AI, which is not exactly great. So I just wanted to, first of all, thank you for your time and helping us with this mission.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it makes it great. We also have with us a special guest, Rifle, who is a retired SOF JTAC. How are you doing today, Rifle?
I'm great, thank you. And I want to thank you also for taking the time to have me on board this kind of podcast that you're doing.
Yeah, well, you know, the people make everything, and I know you have your YouTube channel, which has some great content for JTACs and training. There'll be a link in the description of this. But, you know, you weren't in this mission, so having your input from an outsider standpoint is really cool. And, you know, I think it's going to be a good combination with us. So what I'd like to do is start off by talking about what the intent of this mission is and maybe getting into a little bit of what sensor tasking is. Do you want to cover that, Blizzard?
Yeah, so sensor tasking is just allocating your aircraft sensors efficiently to make sure you've got all your objectives and your friendly forces covered.
And there's different postures to that, correct?
Yeah, so you've got defensive, neutral, and offensive. Defensive is all sensors on friendlies, and then neutral is one on the objective, and then one running back to friendlies. And then in offensive, both your flight lead and your wingman are going to have sensors on the objective. And
part of that, you just alluded to something that I don't think anyone maybe all the people realize is when you say one is on the friendlies and one is looking around, you never fly alone, right? You're always in pairs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So that's just an assumption that's there. Rifle, have you had any experience with sensor tasking like this?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things that you kind of learn downrange because gas and jets are in such high demand for training that as JTACs in training, it's you get the 9 line out, there's a quick scenario, and you gotta get the bombs off the rails before you actually RTB the jet because he's going to run out of fuel at some point. And so a lot of that sensor stuff, we kind of like train ourselves the wrong way in a sense where it's hurry up, drop a bomb, now the mission's over, high fives and chocolate cake. Downrange, you can get jets overhead and nothing's happening for 4 hours, right? And so in my experience, first tour as a JTAC was in 2009 in Afghanistan, and the jets are going to get bored. There's human beings up there, and then they're like, hey man, what do you want us to do? And as a soft JTAC, I was really fortunate, had lots of assets. So I'm using all of these sensors to create one giant eyeball. And that's just, I learned the hard way. I had pilots kind of like, hey dude, you got to put us to work. And so I'm really curious to see what comes of the video.
Yeah, sure. So right now in the video, we've just taken off from the carrier and we're headed to a check-in point. And I'm just playing this while we have a little chat here and get into it. But I think what I'd like to do is move us forward to my check-in because that is going to... Well, actually, you know what? Back up. Blizzard, do you want to paint the scenario of what we're doing first? I forgot to do that.
Yeah, so the ground forces is a 6-vehicle convoy, or maybe 7. We're moving supplies from one airfield to the other. And the scenario is more like ISIS fighters or insurgents, local militias maybe. So small arms, manpads, and then tech vehicles, maybe a couple BMPs here and there. Okay. And then we've got the aircraft coming in, and they're going to be doing armed overwatch for the convoy. So,
right on. So when we check in, obviously we get a brief. So let me move us forward in time to when that brief comes in. Well, actually, one thing I do want to cover really quick. The squadron, the VFA 192, the virtual squadron, not the real ones, we're very focused on trying to deploy the Hornet tactically. So working together to solve problems, working with people on the ground to do different things in different roles, such as a JTAC. And so this was, I think, the 4th iteration of training that we had done. We had learned some stuff, but as you're going to see in this video, we still had some more to learn. So I'm going to skip us ahead here to the check-in and turn the volume on. So give me just 1 second here. All right, here we go. Hunter 22, Dragon 11.
Dragon 11, Hunter 22, same current position altitude.
230, 33 miles, 34,000.
Let's confirm that's relation to the start point.
To waypoint 1.
Confirm. Alright, be advised, only player in the stack. Go ahead and proceed overhead, block 1520, and report established. Go ahead and send your check-in when able.
So I'm going to pause this here for just a second. I know this is a theme that you guys and I have talked about before, and that is safe route of flight. Is that the right term? Did I just use that right?
Routing and safety of flight, but good enough for government work,
Yeah, government work. Routing and safety of flight. I know that for a lot of folks, maybe in DCS, they're not used to having to do this. So do you want to talk a little bit about deconfliction and why that's important?
Yeah, so I mean, most people I think are used to starting off every scenario or when they're contacting somebody with their check-in, sending their loadouts and their call sign, letting them know who they are. But really, the important part before you even get to that step is your routing and safety. So letting everybody know in your airspace where you're at and what you're doing, so you can contact the controlling agency of that airspace and get pushed to the proper location. A reason why that's so important is because you have other aircraft in the stack, or maybe there's hot artillery going off and it's flying through the air. We use the term big sky, little bullet a lot of times as a joke, but in reality, in Vietnam, that happened a lot where we had aircraft flying into each other, and we had aircraft flying into hot artillery gun to target lines. So it's really important to make sure you keep the aircraft deconflicted.
What'd you say again? Big sky what?
Big sky, little bullet.
Big sky rifle. Have you ever heard that before?
Yep, absolutely. The first time I learned about routing and safety, when I got yelled at because I didn't care about where the plane was, it was just that. And I'm glad that Blizzard brought up the Vietnam, because a picture that I use is a cargo aircraft coming in, and its wing has been clipped by a 155 artillery shell. And so it's that kind of crazy. Where there's a will, there's a way. Even with plans go to shit, and guys, have fatal, catastrophic failures and accidents. And so routing and safety of flight is the first thing that you do as a JTAC, and also the last thing in the 12 steps CAS procedure.
Absolutely. And what you're talking about with that round hitting is the max ord, right? The max height of ordnance, so that you want to stay above them so you don't get impacted by those.
Yeah, this one was actually coming into forward operating base, so it was like on final, and a round ripped right through the aircraft. So like he was way below max ord, but that's it was just everything that we have today as policy, if you will, for people that may not understand doctrine, comes from hard lessons learned.
So written in blood.
100%.
Yeah, and I think, there's a lot of great things about DCS, and people like you make, for a pilot like me who wants to learn and push the skills, make it amazing. But we don't have the risk of death. And, I've stated before we started this, I'm open. Everything's on the table. The mistakes I've made here, I only want to learn from. And fortunately, I only have, I guess, a little ego or pride on the line, right? I'm not going to actually die if we screw it up. So,
I think though, like one of the things from DCS perspective is you're right. We're not going to die. However, if your ingress is an hour and a half from startup, and go to the tanker and ingress in some of those large scale mission profiles that people are doing, then yeah, you really want to be able. DCS, because of its authenticity, naturally induces real world tactics because you will not respawn right away, right? Like the guys are going to call it a night when he respawns on the flight line, and now you have to ingress another hour, an hour and a half, and you haven't even shown up to your moment of vulnerability or the AO yet. So you don't die, but by putting these things in, you're making sure that the guys are going to have a good evening.
For sure, and JTF or Blizzard and I fly in another group that's larger, and he sees what happens when there's a lot of pilots in the sky, and your squadron and your reputation become important because people are depending on you to complete your mission so they can do theirs, right? So there is that. All right, let's continue on here. Roger, 2 F-18s checking in. Weapons, 2 by GBU 12, 2 by GBU 38, 2 times laser MAV, 600 rounds SAFI each by 2. Playtime 1 hour. Abort is abort.
Copy, abort in the clear. Stand ready for situation update.
Send it.
Threats are possible small arms manpads. Enemies unknown. It's got some possible ID makers in the vicinity on the routes. No other info of enemy disposition at this time. Friendlies are holding at start point, waiting for a visual of Dragon 1-1, and then we're going to start moving to checkpoint 1, then checkpoint 2, and so on. No artillery. Control is by Hunter 2-2, and how copy? Suck 2-2 Alpha.
What was that?
Ascend.
Copy 2-2 Alpha. Dragon 1-1. Laser code is 1743. Dragon 1-2. Laser code 1744. Dragon 1-1 has contact on waypoint 1. So I make a mistake there. I say contact when I should say visual, right?
Oh, yeah. If you're contact friendlies, yes, you're going to want to start. If you're visual friendlies, it'll be visual. But yeah, if you're not sure if it's friendlies or not, I mean, you can always say contact.
Right. But the whole concept is we use contact and capture for things we want to destroy, and we use blind and visual for things we don't want to destroy, like our friends.
Right. Correct.
Yeah. Blizzard, any question, or Blizzard Rifle, any questions after we got the check-in and the briefing? Do you understand where we're going at this point?
Oh yeah, I'm actually like feeling pretty comfortable as if I'm a JTAC instructor again, and I'm writing down every single thing right now. So it's kind of like a warm-up for me. But so far, like everything's really good.
Yeah, I
you
did.
Can't catch the lazy enemy disposition, but
Okay.
I mean, I did mess up and I forgot the laser codes on my check-in, but I did throw them in. And then if you noticed, my wingman is telling me, hey, Eddie, it's time to descend, which crew resource management and working together as a team up in the sky, you're going to see in this coming up how it helps you. And then you're going to see something where it can actually hurt you, right? So...
Yeah, the only thing I have to say for that is I think you're too hard on yourself. Like, if you get a Marine coming in, he's going to be down cold. But if you get like a Navy F-18 and he's been doing more air-to-air stuff, like the laser code, he might forget that. Other countries will forget that too. That's real life. So it's like really hats off to you. It's a really good job because for me, I understand it. And the only thing I would put out there is probably the laser codes. I would like put a bigger separation on laser codes. 1743 to 1744. I don't have access as a dirty foreigner to what that data is, but I'd sooner go 1743 and 1643 or 1644 just to get that difference. just because that's the pulse repetition frequency of the laser, right? And to be off by one digit, I would just be careful with that.
Okay.
Probably not simulated in DCS, but that's just on like my spidey senses.
So the laser itself can be the issue, or just someone writing it down?
Maybe both. The for the laser is where I'm at on this
Okay.
one is 4.3 to 4.4. In real life, there's going to be a bigger separation than that.
Okay.
Personally, I'm not saying that I've been on every control on the planet, which is impossible. I've just never heard it being like one single digit off from the other.
Okay, and that's to give a spread so that the spectrum of the laser and the frequency in which it's giving a signal is a greater difference than just one number.
Yeah, exactly. So like for my experience, you always have a guy who comes in 1688. That's the classic, and then another guy will come in like 1511.
You know what's funny is we were watching Top Gun Maverick with my wife, and have you seen that movie, Rifle?
I have, yeah.
Blizzard, have you seen it?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So the part where they called in 1688 as a laser code, were you guys laughing? Because I laughed out loud in the audience. It was pretty funny, actually.
Yeah, they definitely copied that from DCS.
You think so?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think I was the only asshole that, laughed out loud in the theater because it's just like, oh, that's too funny. It's no one else had a clue, right? So whatever.
Well, I think while we're at it too, some good information. Like, what's going on in your guys' head when you guys are getting all this down? Do you guys have any good method? Like, is the speed of which you're getting the situation update good, or?
Are you talking about from a pilot perspective?
Yeah, from a pilot perspective.
Yeah.
Being able to write all that information down, especially if you're in VR, I know that can be really difficult. But that's a different can of worms.
Yeah. Well, I'm not. So, and my wingman in this case is not, but that is a different can of worms. But what is the saying? Slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's funny because even though this isn't real, the first thing I think of when you're giving me information is I got to write this down right now and I got to get it perfect. And I put a lot of stress on myself that I don't know that you need to. I think the calmer you are, the less stressed you're on about it, the better. But I also respect the fact that you're giving your time and I want to do this right. And, I want to do things the right way. So for me, the way I handle this is I actually have a dry erase board. And
Nice.
And it works well. I actually went from a half size one to a full size one, kind of cheating a little bit because you wouldn't have that in a cockpit. But
yeah, but what I was gonna say, it's awesome because you'll get a Harrier pilot. He's got a grease pencil. He's writing on his canopy.
Oh, that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, I think there's some pictures out there somewhere I have to find.
Interesting.
Oh yeah, they'll have it like tethered to the side of the canopy or on their fingertip. And so they can go on the knee board, but it's not uncommon to see a CAS player who's writing on his canopy.
Now that's just some real life stuff I never even would have thought of. So, I mean, it's not going to obstruct your view too much. It's easily accessible and readable, and you could erase it and start over, right?
100%.
Wow. So my dry erase board actually is more realistic than I ever thought.
Yeah, you're immersing yourself even more in DCS world by having your own grease pencil on the canopy, so to speak.
That's awesome. So I allot space for different things and notes. Now, we had briefed this ahead of time. I don't remember if we briefed every little thing, but the main thing that I want to do is I want to make sure that my responsibility as a flight lead is being met. So get the information down, make sure I understand it, and make sure we're getting to our area for the safe route of flight. And then also, if there is something down there, if you give us a SAM site or something to be concerned about, that we are going in the right direction. We are avoiding what we're supposed to avoid. In this case, we were just simply getting the friendly convoy in our targeting pod so they could begin their movement. So for me, it's kind of threefold. It's getting the information to make sure I have it, whatever update there is, and writing it neat enough on my dry erase board without trying to rush that I can read it later. And then, getting us safely there and making sure that, this information exchange doesn't hold us up too long. Those are kind of my thoughts. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, being a flight lead's a whole other can of worms we can get into. Let me see here. Yeah,
I mean, I think it's still just equally as important, whether you're the JTAC or whether you're the pilot in the sky. The workload is distributed easily or equally, and that's why we call it a CAS team. So.
No, absolutely, and there's some things coming up here when I was reviewing this video, because it's been a while since we did this, where the CAS process and the CAS team actually stop something bad from happening. So I hope we get to that, but. We'll go back here. We're trying to get on target here, or on the friendlies.
All right, confirm your visual friendlies. It's going to be 4 by Humvees, 3 by supply trucks.
Dragon 1-1 has capture on, or has visual on friendlies.
Copy. Report overhead, and then we're going to get the convoy moving.
Gonna turn to the right.
Yeah, so we're offsetting to the right. For anyone that doesn't know,
Roger.
The Hornet carries a targeting pod on the left side of the aircraft, just before the
Hunter
wings.
2-2,
And
Dragon
we carry
1-1,
extra
be
fuel tank
advised.
to the right,
Dragon 2
which
is going to
keeps us,
refuel and then come on station.
keeps the targeting pod free on the left side.
Copy.
So that when we're in a left-hand orbit, nothing
Sum
is
up at,
obstructing it, and we
17,
have the
so.
best view.
Yeah,
Right?
from the
So we're
B-15,
offsetting
so
right
2,000 foot.
here before we tell you were established.
We have 15 to 20,
so that
so why don't we
when
do?
we're looking
Why don't
down,
we do like
we have a period of
18
time
to
with the
20,
sensor.
and you have 15 to 17.
Okay.
Gives us a little bit more breathing room.
1-1, are you overhead yet?
Yeah, just call us overhead. I'm overhead.
Affirm, we are overhead.
Copy. Convoys on the move. So what is your guys' process to make sure you guys keep sensors on the convoy the entire time? I know, because when you guys, if you're running a racetrack, at some point or another, I know you guys are going to get masked by your aircraft.
Yeah, so in the beginning of this, my thought was I'm just going to do a slow circle around the convoy and never lose optical. If I do a wide enough circle slow enough, I won't ever lose. Now, as you stated in the check-in, we were the only aircraft in play, and I was blocked out from my wingman. So I own the airspace. I can do what I want, right?
Right.
Now, you're jumping ahead to something I actually have notes of that I want to talk about. When Dragon 2 checks in, the airspace is no longer mine, and you put in a restriction on us that makes it more difficult. And at that point, there's actually a section we'll talk about coming up where I stop it because we are actually communicating about that very process. We are talking about when we are masked, when the targeting pod can't see the convoy, and then when I'm in that position, making sure that my wingman can see. So kind of, if you do think of it as a racetrack kind of effect, we want to be entering in the portion of the racetrack where we have the best visual, while our wingman is maybe getting masked, so we have the most time. Then he can get on and just trying to stay the opposite end of that circle. So the tactic is really just trying to have a coordination with your wingman about that. But as the dynamicness of this mission increases and the information flow comes in, that becomes more of a challenge, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to get pretty crazy here soon.
Yeah. All right. So let's continue on here.
So we should be able to just do east
We're
to west
looking at the
racetracks
convoy.
along waypoints here.
We're keeping our sensors on.
And that should keep us sensors on for the most part.
Yeah, affirm.
Are we both neutral? Do you want me to scout ahead?
You are scouting ahead. I'm a neutral.
So I'll be offensive, I guess.
Yeah, shit, I'm blind on them. Hold on.
And Dragon 7 already sensor tasking.
Stand by one.
Copy.
I'm on him. Send tasking.
Neutral sensor posture. Just start scanning the lines of communication for any suspicious activity of MAMs and or IEDs on the road.
Roger, woke up.
Dragon 1 has captured roadblock, probably 100 meters ahead of the convoy.
Go ahead and call it in.
Copy, that's a friendly roadblock.
Yeah, I did call him.
Sorry.
Yeah, I hear that old dumb squelch, so we can differentiate on the channels.
Yeah, I need to fix that. I don't hear anything.
Oh, yeah. I love the sound effects.
This diamond is what I'm looking at. This staple, as we call it, is what my wingman is looking at. Now, this is great when there's just two of us. You'll see later where this gets more complicated. I don't know. Did you guys know that?
Yes.
Okay.
I did not. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, I didn't know because you don't fly the 14 or the 18, do you?
I do not. No.
Okay. Yeah. So it's one way that, I can't just slew my thing to it by snapping it to where he's looking, but I can maneuver it by slewing it manually. I can't just force it there. But it's a good way for me to say, I'm looking at the convoy. He's ahead over here. I know where he is. It's just one more way for us to have situational awareness of what we're each doing.
Dragonflight Hunter 22 report. Did you guys see anything yet?
I got nothing.
Negative. We have sensors postured as requested and tracking.
So now things
Break,
get
troops
interesting.
Oh, there's an explosion.
Yep, I see it.
It's southeast. Looks like 500 meters. Stand by. We're gonna try and push through it.
Yeah, firm. I see the convoy is still moving.
That's me talking to my wingman there, not to the JTAC.
That's good to know. I was going to say there's no need for
Yeah,
that.
no. Yeah, no. I'm just making sure because, again, I don't know if he doesn't have sensors on them yet.
I can't zoom out too far. Can you check the back of the convoy and see if it's still moving?
We can't
Yeah,
really see it from our
okay.
position. We got like a general direction. I'm thinking like a 120 off the lead vehicle, so maybe a 1 o'clock.
Stand by. We're counting vehicles. Convoy's still on the move. Do we have 7 vehicles total?
Hey, firm, we're still on the move.
I'm blind.
So he's telling me he's blind. He can't see.
Copy.
His targeting pod.
No, just focus. Shit. Confirm direction from convoy.
1 o'clock.
Second
Convoy's hold, we
explosion.
just
Convoy
lost.
has stopped.
Can hear that in your voice too.
What was that?
Can hear that in your voice too, getting amped
Yeah,
up.
yeah. Well,
Yeah, here comes the adrenaline.
it
Oh yeah.
it might be a game, but you get all this going, it still happens, right? And something that is going to be a theme going forward here, and I don't know if you realize this, Blizzard. The communication we have interflight, interfering with you or other people talking is a constant problem. And I think we need better discipline to not do that. But we're so comfortable sometimes we do it because in a lot of situations it's not a big deal. But when things are this critical, it does become a big deal. So
100%.
yeah, that's something that I think we have to learn a little better. But it's just a matter of there's just too much at one time. Audibly, you cannot process things all at once. Visually, you can process it, what's called a gestalt, all at once. But audio, you really can only do one channel at a time. So let's continue on here.
Be advised, convoy, lead vehicle popped a tire. We're still taking troops in contact. Stand by for 9 line.
Send it when ready.
They got their pit crew out there right now. Their wrenches.
NASCAR
Yeah.
style. Under fire this time.
Yeah, right.
I'm seeing him get him shot out there, but I can't see from where. It looks like it was coming from the east side, southeast of the road.
Are you saying 1 o'clock from the convoy?
Send ready 9 line.
Go for 9-9.
Send 9 line. You take it. I'm going to keep posturing.
Type 2 control, bomb on coordinate. Requesting 1 by 38. Lines 1 through 3 from the overhead. Elevation 1140 feet. Armor and packs. 37 Sierra, Charlie Alpha, 7941 0451. No mark. North 1100 meters. Egress to the overhead. 784 marks.
Send them.
Keep your attack parallel to the friendly convoy. And ground point is intent is to suppress the enemy, so we have enough time to get out of here.
Copy, stand by.
Go for readbacks when able.
It's a 38, it's you, by the way.
Yep, I'm on it. Hold on.
So I'm just putting my information into the system because I'm supposed to read back the grid coordinate from my system.
Right. Yep. And that's as you know, it's going to be bomb on coordinate is going to be always read back from the system and whoever's employing the munition.
Right. And as you guys heard there, I originally assigned it to my wingman, but I had the 38s and he had the 12. So now we have to switch everything, and I got to go from
flip flop.
Yeah, I got to go from sensor posture on the convoy to now I'm engaging the target. Right.
Wait, what? That coordinate's on friendly.
And this takes a minute.
Hunter's looking for readbacks.
You want it now.
Yeah,
Ready for feedbacks.
Hey, the Joes are yelling. They're mad. Go for readbacks from your system.
Roger. From system, elevation 1140 feet. Charlie Alpha 7941 0450.
Copy and confirm attacks parallel to the convoy.
Confirming it parallel to the convoy.
All right, so I'm going to pause this here. Rifle, what kind of attack was this?
What do you mean, like your ambush that you're
No.
the situation you're
Was
in?
this a bomb on target or bomb on coordinate?
Right now, like just getting from the 9 line is definitely like a bomb on target, because originally there's like 8 digits that were left read to you, so it's got an error inherently of 10 square meters, and then on your read back you read the first 4 digits and then you added a 0, making it 5 digits on the last one. So unless you want to add a 0 after your 7941, so this is like, are you dropping the bomb on coordinates?
Yes. But here so you just opened up another issue with the Hornet. But let's stick with 1 second here to the bomb on coordinate, which I'm supposed to be dropping. Okay.
Okay.
I entered into my system. I read it back. Now, I can't predict what would have happened had something not happened. But earlier we talked about crew resource management and working things together, right? So sometimes someone can be working with you, and in DCS, and I think in all of our minds, when you're being called in and it's a troops in contact, you want to kill the bad guy. I mean, would anyone argue with that?
Yeah, you want to do it proficiently,
Right.
and as effectively as soon as possible.
Right. But it's also possible that killing the enemy is secondary to suppressing the enemy. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say it depends on your timeline. Like, what's the intent?
Right. Yeah, and that was I think that's what Callie's getting at too here, is like when in the remarks section of the 9 line, the ground force commander's intent here was to suppress the enemy forces, to give them time, friendlies can push through the engagement, the far side engagement, and push past them to get out of the line of fire.
Right. So what I'm getting at is pay, and we might have to back this up a little bit, but pay particular attention to this exchange, remembering that we're doing this as a bomb on coordinate, and watch what happens with the crew resource management. All right?
Push immediate.
Pushing immediate.
So I'm trying to offset so I can go parallel.
Oh, I see it. It's a little,
So now my wingman says
I
he
think it's an
sees it.
APC just south of the waypoint, like 50 meters.
So
Come
in
Blaze.
my mind, we just went from I'm
Yeah, if
going to
you can.
bomb on coordinate to he's
Yeah,
just pointing out a
lasing
target.
1743. Sorry, 1744.
And I switch and put my...
Stand by, turning it.
So the reason he can laze for me is we preset the laser designated search
Am I on it? It looks like I'm on it.
to each other. So all
Yeah,
I have to do is
3830,
hit
that's you.
LST when I turn in, and he can laze it, and I'm going to get on target quickly. So this is something we had worked out ahead of time.
You got capture?
So I literally
Yep,
hit
I'm
LST,
capture, sorry.
and then poof, I'm
Okay,
on his
laser off.
now found target.
1-1 inbound. 250.
1-1 continue.
And
Pave weight.
You didn't say in or whatever.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, did you say like immediate attack or something?
No, I said inbound. He said continue.
Yeah, but then you paid way and it wasn't like cleared hot.
Oh, shit. Shack.
1-1, good hits.
so I made the wrong actual call there.
It's a case of beer.
I don't even know how many of those I owe. All right. So now we have our, shack on the target. And obviously my wingman has the best intent. He wants to kill the thing that's attacking our guys on the ground, right? Stop them from being in jeopardy. But we, as a crew, went from a BOC, so a bomb on a coordinate, so just drop it on a coordinate, to a BOT. Now, I'm guessing that under the rules of engagement, we made a big boo-boo, right?
The conversation should have gone back to the JTAC to be able to. Was there? And I didn't hear it. Was there a clearance given there by the JTAC?
You might have to back it up. I didn't
So,
hear it for sure.
I called inbound and I gave a direction, and I think you said continue. But the problem is I should have said in, not inbound, because it would be, what is it? It's inbound IP. Is that right?
IP inbound.
Yeah, IP inbound. Then it's departing IP, then in. So I gave a muddled call to basically say I was turning in to a point, not turning into the target, right? And you said continue. You never said cleared hot. So there's a few things that I look back at this video, which is one of the reasons I record them so I can see what happened. So no, this was not done properly. There was no cleared hot on this at all.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah. No, like I said, this is open season. I made some mistakes, but and that communication is critical. I am telling the JTAC, right, for safety and for routing of the flight and a lot of other reasons. Hey, I'm coming into this IP point, but we didn't have an IP point. We were from the overhead, and I'm using comms incorrectly. And had I said in or whatever, he could have said cleared hot. Now, he wouldn't have known we switched from a BOC to a BOT, but from what he knew from his standpoint, would have at least given the correct calls, right? So, I don't know. Have Rifle, have you ever experienced someone doing a mistake like this IRL?
Oh yeah. Give me a second if I can chat this one. Yeah, so the number 2 came in. I talked on the lead. This was a helicopter. And 2 came in and then just like whipped out a 2.75-inch rocket. And so then at that point I had to say it's at my command, which just means hold weapons until I give the clear to engage. But in training, yeah, there's been a couple mess ups too, where crews generally in fighter attack aircraft, where they're multi-purposed, right? They're not doing CAS all the time. So if they've been doing 3 months of air-to-air and then all of a sudden show up day number 1 and 2 on close air support, it takes a while for the brain to kind of switch over for some people.
Yeah, and as a DCS pilot, and I say that in quotes because I'm certainly not a fighter pilot, but I do enjoy the challenge of it that DCS presents. We don't go through the same training pipeline, or pipeline is, really a loose term because there isn't one for most people, right? You open up the game,
Yeah.
you probably hit fly now, you do an air start, you bang the throttles forward, you yank the stick around, and that's where you start your flight training, right? So
100%, yeah.
So we kind of learn backwards in my mind, and it's something I like to talk about more at a different point. So for me, I'd like to think I've improved. I like to think I learned from doing this. I know I'm much more conscientious now thinking about BOT and BOC. But at the same time, it was easy under stress to go from, we're going to drop on coordinate, to there's the target, because you're so used to thinking about, I want to kill something. Whereas as a JTAC, on the ground, you just may want to suppress something, because I guarantee you, and I haven't been in field, so I can't tell you for sure, but if a bomb went off near me, I'm going to try to get away from it. I'm going to put my head down, right?
Yeah, it's going to be a big blast. I can't remember the distance on this one, but I think it was relatively close.
It was. And, Rifle, I'm assuming you've used suppression in training in an IRL before?
Yeah, you had a good discussion earlier on about the ground force commander's intent wanting to separate from the threat, and following escalation of force. The first thing you would start off with is a show of force, and that might assist with getting the enemy heads down, and then after that, then you could definitely start tossing weapons in there.
Yeah, no, sure. And it's funny because I was watching some videos on YouTube about CAS being called in, so I could get used to some of the different ways it's done, which I have an example here we'll talk about in a minute. And they talked about doing a show of force. And I was like, dude, that'd be kind of cool to do, even just doing DCS. But back to the main point too, the difference between a BOC and a BOT is a BOC should be a lot quicker, right? Because you're just dropping on a coordinate. You don't have to find a target. You don't have to have the correlation phase. You're just doing this a bit quicker. Is that correct?
It could be. It depends on some stuff. Like, you could drop BOC on a 2-figure grid if you wanted to, but that'll be like 10 square kilometers, and you're really going to just drop on, I think it's the northwest corner, or sorry, the southwest corner of that square. So when you go into an AO, predominantly the spins or the special instructions will request that your 10-figure grid has to be what's called a mensurated grid, and that comes from a special footprint within impregnated in certain satellite imagery using a certain kind of software. And so when you look at the battlefield and you have like your Samsung tablet onto your chest and then look down onto your software, so you have to look at the battlefield with your eyeballs, and then you look on your map to see digitally where the target's at, and then right then and there you actually induce more error, just like the size of your pen point and stuff like that, and the slant angle at which you're watching it, things like that. So essentially a category 1 grid is what you're putting in there, and if I remember correctly, it's 0 to 6 meters or 0 to 6 feet. It's one of the two. It might be 6 meters, and then that's what's acceptable in theater. So that doesn't mean you can't do it like on an 8-figure grid in DCS, but in theater, of course, they demand that precision, and that doesn't mean there isn't going to be a theater later on where it's just like you don't have to do that. So it's just kind of like spitball those kind of ideas.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier about how I read back the grid, and one of the challenges was it originally an 8-digit grid? Do you remember, Blizzard?
Yes, it was an 8-digit grid.
Okay. So in order for me to enter in an 8-digit grid, I have to box precise on the HSI page. I can no longer enter in a 6-digit grid, and I can't enter in an 8-digit grid. I can only enter in a 10-digit grid. So what happens is I have to read back the first 4 digits, skip a digit, and then read the next 4 digits and skip the last digit. So, we talk about a pilot bucket, right? You guys familiar with that term?
Is that true though? Like if you're up on your the central, I don't know what's called on the F-18, but if you go to your JDAM display page.
Well, that would be a different.
Will it not be there?
So that's a different way of entering it. You can enter it in the mission page on a JDAM, but you enter that in lat long. And I was past an 8-digit grid. If you're going to enter a grid, it's my understanding that in the DCS Hornet, I can enter a 6-digit or a 10-digit. So I have to add a 0 at the end of each one of an 8-digit grid. So it's just one more complication that you have to get your way through.
Yeah, so you're talking about plugging it into the jet
Yes.
though, right? And so for the readback on one of your DDIs, then there's a place where you can see the entire grid inside the actual computer.
Yes.
And then I thought you were talking about the readback. So then you would see the whole 8 or 10 figures, and you could read it back in one swoop,
Right.
for lack of a better word.
Right. But we've talked about this, and I need to read it back the way it's given. So in the jet, I'm going to see a 10, but I got to convert it back to an 8 in my mind as I read it back.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Got it.
And so, well, have you guys heard of the term a pilot bucket before?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that term mean to you?
He's just super busy. Like I've been up in the jet a few times, and it's a different kind of beast. And on top of that, they're disassociated from the battlefield. They're separated. So that's where the words come in on there. But for the pilot bucket, like these guys are head on a swivel, worried about RPMs on 2 engines that they still have to look from time to time, make sure that they're not missing anything. They're task saturated.
No, and that's the whole concept, right? The bucket is equivalent to holding water. The bigger the bucket, the more tasks or water you can hold, right? And when we're going through this, and this all happened very, very quickly. The input from the wingman happened as I was turning in. I got my targeting pod on his laser designation while I was turning in. This all happened in a very, very quick space of time. And so reading back and trying to, edit those digits in your head and doing all this stuff at one time is important for precision. It's just from a pilot standpoint, it's a skill that I think is not only hard to get, but it's perishable. And it's one of the challenges I personally enjoy of DCS, to push my skills and to learn more. So anything else you guys want to talk about on this? Would you want to see that again in real time?
No, I don't think so. The only one that I would put down for remarks is I really like the remarks for the final attack heading being parallel to the road, but I don't believe there's a direction there. So, for example, if the road is east-west running and the friendlies are going towards the west, I may want a west-to-east attack. Understanding some weapons may land short if there's like a fin lock and stuff, but you definitely want the fragmentation of that weapon system going away from the friendlies. That's so you know what I mean. So if the enemy is south of the east-west running road, then I would want the attack to go from west towards the east.
You want the bomb to drop and frag forward of the troops, not in the direction of them.
Yeah, exactly. So if the troops are on an east-west running road and they're going towards the west, I want you coming in from the west, and I'm going to roll the dice that there's not going to be a weapon malfunction, and when it hits the ground or the target, that fragmentation is going towards the east. However, if you were using a JDAM, which was the original intent, then you can like fix the CEP, or the circular error of probability, by giving it the maximum dive angle. So then it's just kind of like a small circle if it comes in closest to 90 degrees.
So it's funny, and I know we're going to get a little bit off topic talking about this, but from a, I was in the military, but I wasn't involved with these types of operations. I didn't fly planes. I didn't call in strikes. Okay. But when I watched the Gulf War, I remember all the discussion about precision weapons. And it made it sound like it was this neat, clean, sort of like very precise thing where everything works perfectly. And what you're describing, I like a lot, because you're describing at a granular level how you employ this weapon, the fact that they can fall short and have issues, and what the repercussions are, and how you weigh it out. Do you weigh out a weapon falling short or the frag pattern? Because you can't win on both when you're this close, right? So you have to make those decisions. So I'm very curious, like, that's got to be a stressful thing to make that decision in real time and know that there's no perfect solution.
Yeah, I can say that with working with ISIS, just looking at the information that I had really poor avenues of attack to employ a B-1 bomber, and a 2,000-pound JDAM had fin lock immediately upon being released, where the pilot of the B-1 was telling me that the bomb had gone in front and above him. So when a bomb is released, it instantly starts going faster than the airplane that's giving it a ride because of gravity. And so when it had fin lock, they just described this like pickup truck of a bomb size.
What, you're saying fin lock?
Fin, Foxtrot, India, November.
So the fins of the weapon are locked up and they're not steering.
That's right. So they lock, and then, then the weapon is literally doing donuts in the sky while coming down.
Wow. So you're talking about a weapons error that the actual weapon is malfunctioning.
Yeah, that's right. And so this 2,000-pound JDAM did donuts behind the Kurdish lines by a couple kilometers. And so while everyone was looking to their front, the weapon landed to their back. So it crossed the friendly lines, and then it was like, an hour debrief afterwards. Like, well, what was the best avenue of attack? And so everyone kind of came away with, we should have found a better one, but no one had an answer for me. So that's how crazy it can get. And then fusing was a big one in 2015 too. Like, a lot of GBU 38s were duds. A few 31s went dud. But the cool thing about that is I remember this one 2,000 pounder was a dud in a home. And so you could see through the roof, there's a nice black circle that the 2,000 pounder went in. And then we just put another 2,000 pounder on the same coordinates, and it went right through that same hole. And so, like, that was it. So we had two large explosions.
So you ignited one with the other.
Yeah, it was 4,000 pounds of HE going off.
The thought of a 2,000-pound bomb dropping with a live fuse that's going to impact, it's going to detonate when it impacts, and not knowing where it's going to go, that's got to be a holy shit moment, right? I mean,
yeah, you're out of control. Like, you just got to wait.
Yeah, and it could come on to you friendly. You have no idea, right?
Yeah, in this scenario, I was not on the front line. I was sitting at a desk, with like coffee and warmed up Pop-Tarts in a collared, with like 511 pants and a rolled up shirt, like a collared shirt. So, we knew there was a weapons malfunction, no big deal. But it took like a good about 10 minutes until the Kurdish forces radioed in that, like, hey, there's a massive explosion behind us. And then we put two to two together. It took about a half hour for the whole process to kind of sink in what had just happened. But by the time that had happened, it's like nobody died. Okay, great, we're good. And then I slept that night.
Right. Well, and things are imperfect, right? Nothing happens like in this aesthetic place where, there are no mistakes and everybody does things right. So, for me as a DCS pilot, obviously the risks of that happening aren't super high. We don't have fin lock and these other errors and different things that you don't think about. I think it would be interesting to have that problem. I wouldn't want to have it all the time, but more realism, I guess I'm for. At the end of the day, I don't know. I still think of the concept of you're on the ground, this bomb is falling. You can't run. You don't know where there's just nothing you can do. You literally are just waiting to see the outcome. It's kind of a scary, surreal, crazy kind of thought in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at that, and you can also look at like when human beings make mistakes. Generally, when CAS mistakes happen, it's because the JTAC and the pilot failed along the procedure. So and then there's weapons. Yeah, it can get pretty hairy.
So we've been looking at this video and talking about it for a while. I think we're close to an hour. I think what we should do is pause here and we'll shoot a second version. I think we've covered a lot of really good topics that I've wanted to cover. One of my desires to do this was to discuss what it's like to be a pilot doing some of these more difficult things, some of the mistakes you make, some of the lessons you've learned. We actually redid this mission at night this week. And I can tell you, I applied a lot of lessons I'd learned in that to this, and maybe we'll even talk about some of that in the future. But I appreciate you guys coming in and talking about this and sharing some of the real world mix into it. Blizzard, you've been working with us for a while now. I hope it's worth it to you to see us progress and your training of us, have some payback to you to have some fun in DCS.
Oh man, the leaps and bounds that you guys, from when we started to even now, this is, I think, the third mission that we did together after the CAS training we did. And I mean, from 0 to hero is where we're at right now. So.
Yeah. And I mean, this is a lot of real time stuff, a moving convoy, and it isn't just some target sitting out in the open. There's some time frame on this one that's critical. So I appreciate that. I know, Rifle, we've discussed that you want to do some stuff with us on some flights coming up. Hopefully we've shown at least a basic level of proficiency here, despite my mistakes, that you can see we can at least perform at some level.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun, and I want you to know that how we're talking about this video, to some degree, it's not following the format, but a briefing is kind of like this. So that's pretty interesting. And then regardless of like the level that I used to perform at as a close air support JTAC, it's always great to get back to the basics and make sure that your foundation that you're building all of this skill on is strong and thick. So there's nothing wrong with that. And anyone who says close air support is easy, because I know some pilots out there that think that's the case, and I'm not talking about DCS world. All right, those people are like what I like to call wrong. So like this is important, and you alluded to this earlier on. It's a perishable skill. Like after Christmas, guys need to polish up after being away from work for 3 weeks to a month. So I dig this. You're always learning, and the day, like a lot of things, you stop learning, then you just need to leave.
Well, and I think that gets into one of the biggest themes I want to talk about, and that's what it's like to be in a squadron. And when other people are depending on you and you're doing missions and you got people that are giving you your time, you want to perform at a high level and you want to do this right. I know we had a 1 month break between when we did this and started up again. And the first time he called in the distance and direction from the IP, I was like, what does that mean? I'm like, oh yeah, it took me like literally a second to actually process, because I hadn't heard it in a while. I hadn't practiced. I didn't think about it. I thought I knew what I was doing. And then it's like, oh yeah, some of these details are actually really important. So for me, the theme of what it takes to work with a squadron and the complexity of working the problem as a team, we're going to see as we do the second and maybe third episode of this, because there's a lot more to unpack, because a lot more happens in this mission. But that's actually one of the things I hope we get into more. And, being wrong and being in a briefing and admitting, where you made mistakes is one of the things I value about the guys I fly with. Everyone will step up and say, I did this. I messed this up. And It's kind of that no ego, let's learn and apply mentality that I experienced myself in the military. I don't know that I've experienced as much outside of the military. I don't know about your experience with you guys, but for me, it's a little bit, I guess the word addictive might be appropriate, because I really value that. I value the camaraderie that's built from that. And I value the mentality of let's remove ego and let's just get better together. Have you guys dealt with that?
Yeah, various levels on my end, especially myself when I was younger. And today, I think numerous times lucky to be alive, just don't care anymore. It's fine. I make mistakes. I'll make mistakes tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think and when you look at the military, like JTACs and pilots, is arguably speaking, because I can't talk for the other career fields, but it has to be the best career field when it comes to taking criticism and then having thick skin to be able to overcome the obstacles in the training that you're doing, to adapt and always get better and just keep training and getting better.
Yeah, and I love that approach. It just sits well with who I am. So, I think I've flown with some different squadrons. I think it's universally there to some level, but the more you embrace that, I think the better you'll get. With that, I appreciate you guys being here. I'm looking forward to seeing the response from the community. I'd love to have your comments. With that, I'll close it out unless you guys have something else to say.
No, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Blizzard, for being here.
Likewise, Callie, and always cool to spitball back and forth with Blizzard as well.
Awesome. Well, this is going to close it out for this. Join us next time. We'll continue on with this mission and we'll break it down. Thank you.